Hi, Kat here for Lightwave Digital. In the previous video, we were talking about making a simple joint chain, arm kind of crane type deal, and making sure that we were working with layer systems to arrange their structure relative to the parent object, which in this case is going to be layer 1, and how the pivot positions will determine how they rotate and move once they're in layout. So let's just go and take a look at this layers panel. This is a panel that we haven't seen before in our Back to Basics series. Let's take a look at what this panel does. In here, you'll see representations of these layers, including their names, which I've already set. And we have a F and a B column. The F column basically means it's in the foreground, so it's the current active layer. And if we want to see a background layer, we can very easily check it here. Instead of trying to fish it around and try to hit that little tiny button up in the corner, we can use this layer window to select any of the items that we want, and we can very easily hold the shift key down and select all of them in the foreground layer. We can move things over, push them into the background layer, so we can see things from a visibility standpoint very easily. So let's just turn all this to the default and make sure that we've got all of our items where they need their pivots. So we're going to use the A key just to center all in the viewports. That doesn't actually center the object, just centers where we're looking at the object. Okay, and we're going to make sure that that pivot is where it needs to be. For this, we're going to move this over just a little bit. I'm just going to undo that. I'm going to move it over, hit the control key to make sure it's constrained to the axis that you're moving your mouse on. So it's roughly equivalent to what it is over on this end. This is just for placement. Okay, now we're going to go to the next layer. We're going to go to the pivot tool, make sure that it's in a good spot. And we determined that by making sure that it was in the center of the rivet that's going through those two pieces. So that one looks good. Let's hit A so we can center our viewport on the current layer. This one also looks good. Okay, and this one also looks good. All right, so let's save this. Okay, and let's send it over to fresh instance of layout. Okay, and now we can see we have a hierarchy of 4 parts. So we can move this anywhere we want. That's the parent object. We've got the ability to move this wherever we want, and the other ones will follow it. Of course, it breaks the chain from the parent object if we move it that way. Same thing goes with this. It's got the child object, or the last one in the chain of the hierarchy at the end, and then of course this one can be moved independently. Let's undo those movements for each one of those, and we can see that the arrangement that Lightwave has in this setting, the objects are effectively offset, and you can see their pivot origin placed relative to the x-axis. Now this is important because if we want to build the chain that makes sense to have it extend from the origin out, we make sure that this model back here, this model layer, started from, say, the center origin with its pivot there, and then we built the chain from that point onwards. But since we're not doing that, no problem. Let's go and give this whole hierarchy a new parent by hitting load, object, null. You can also use Control N to create that null. We're going to go crane arm parent. Okay. Now I like to color these, so I'm going to right click it, and I like to use red as a master. So this is the master root of the object. Now I can just simply left mouse button click in the hierarchy of the scene editor here and drag that entire chain to the crane. Now this will rotate directly on the center of that axis, which is not something necessarily we wanted. Let's undo this for a second. Let's just move this back out of this arrangement, and Let's offset that parent first before rearranging it, so that it's somewhere back down here. Okay, and we're going to go and make sure that it's under items. I might have to go and make a shortcut key here, which is a function called parent in place. So let's do that now because I really love this tool. And in my normal presets for my configuration for layout and modeler, I have my own setups. But because this is a fresh install of 2024.1, I haven't done that yet. So let's go edit, menu layout. We're going to go and look for a item called parent in place. So there it is, parent in place, on and off. And I like to put this in several places, usually at the root of each item menu. So under animate it comes very handy, right at the top. Setup, because you're going to need this tool probably more often than you'd think. Put one under scene. And that should probably do it. Okay, now, what parent in place will do when it's on is it will parent this item and anything below it where it currently exists to the item that we parent it to. Let's take a look at what that does. So you can see that nothing has moved. Everything's remained in the exact same spot where it needs to be. So we can rotate this around and everything seems like it is without it actually being parented. Now I'm going to undo this by just dragging it out of the chain there. And we're going to turn parent in place off before we do this. And you'll see an interesting set of behavior. Okay, so I'm going to hit delete on this keyframe just to make sure there is no key. Okay. And we can see that it's basically repositioned itself along with the chain. Now to get it back over to kind of where it was, we can snap it and it'll snap to the location of the origin of the parent. In this case, the null, which is the crane arm parent. So now we can freely move this around. That's all great. And we don't have to worry about it going out into outer space or anything like that. Another example of that, let's just undo this again. Let's go undo the parent in place. It goes kind of back to where it was because we don't have parent in place on. It's just going to return back to its origin, which is determined by that pivot point. Let's move this whole thing off a little bit. Okay. And let's turn parent in place on and it won't do that snap. So let's go and parent in place with that on. Now we have the master null and we can rotate this and we've got something that will rotate that object with that offset from the original root of the children that are going into the next round of the hierarchy. So to undo that, let's delete that key. Okay. And without parent in place on or with it off, when you delete that key, it's going to snap to that origin location. So now we get something that's a cute little crane that we can do some cool stuff with. Let's turn the rotation, heading, and pitch off of this and just use this as a object mover. So you can put it anywhere in the scene you want, but really if you want to rotate the object, go down one layer and we can make sure that it's going to rotate based off of these two axes, and you're not worried about the rotation of the parent at all. It can stay in one spot. It can move around anywhere you want, 3D space. We're not going to use the rotation on this object. It's always going to be determined by what's below it. And this can get very handy in various types of rigs. So this is how that relationship works and how it's dependent on pivot points created in Modeler and how you structure your layers in Modeler before exporting your object over to Lightwave Layout. And this also accounts for doing things like conversions from skelegons, which are bones in Modeler, and then convert them over to bones in Layout. We'll get into that in another video though. Thank you for watching.